because you have 5,000 different paint colors for all these different units.
Oh, so, I hadn't even thought about that. You mean you guys haven't gone through the process of just standardizing and everything?
It's
harder than you think. I really wanted to. I was going to go agreeable gray across the board one year.
Agreeable gray. This episode of the Student Housing Insight Podcast is sponsored by TheGuarantors. If you're an operator, you know the importance of a parental guarantor. Having parental guarantors legitimizes your rent roll. But have you ever tried collecting from a parental guarantor after their student skips out or they have to be evicted? How quickly were you able to recoup lost rent from that parental guarantor? The truth is, if things get to a point where a student skips out or is evicted for non-payment, the parental guarantor doesn't care about their credit score. There may have been a job loss or even a divorce. No background check is going to tell you which parent is about to leave their spouse or has an employer who is about to downsize. So how do you eliminate that risk? I mean, reducing risk is like the top 3 responsibilities of a property manager. Well, the Guarantor's rent coverage product does just that. Not only will it ensure that you can quickly recoup lost rent, but it will also increase your prospect to lease conversion rate because you're not waiting on a parent to provide their information. This product makes so much sense for student housing assets, and that's exactly why I'm now advising my asset management clients to forget about parental guarantors and talk to the Guarantors. You can find more information about their rent coverage product as well as other risk reduction products they provide to the student housing industry by going to theguarantors.com/student. You can also find the link in the show notes. Well, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Dees. I'm also the CEO of Student Housing Insight. If you don't know anything about Student Housing Insight, if this is your first time catching our YouTube channel or the podcast, we are a platform for off-campus student housing professionals to network and share ideas as well as data. You can find out more information about our platform at studenthousinginsight.com. Again, that's studenthousinginsight.com, and we'll provide a link for that in the show notes as well. In addition to the podcast, we also host the industry's monthly webinar for the specifically for the U.S. within this industry called Shop Talk. Each month, we provide legislative and policy updates, and that's why I say it's a little bit more geared towards the U.S. Because we work with the National Multifamily Housing Council out of Washington, D.C. to provide those updates, but provide updates that are impacting our industry. Shop Talk also provides a monthly overview of our pre-leasing data for the U.S., both nationally as well as on a regional basis. And with that, we also have a panel of operators who provide kind of their on-the-ground observations, and so that way we're not just getting the data, but we're getting some of those perspectives of portfolio managers and even site level managers. So a lot of great information with that. We also typically have a monthly topic that our leadership committee has said, hey, Wes, we want some more information on, insurance or, whatever kind of the hot topic may be. So a lot of great information there. You should certainly register to receive our email invites. If you're not already, you can do that by going to shoptalk.info. There you'll also be able to see our previous Shop Talk sessions as well. So we've got, I think, a total of 2 years that are cataloged there. So a lot of great information. Again, that's shoptalk.info, and that will also be in the show notes as well. Well, we've got a fantastic topic for this episode. I want to take just a minute and thank those of you in the audience who, have reached out to me over the years, either through, LinkedIn or by email. Some of you guys have even come up to me at a conference and have just said, hey, Wes, thanks so much for the content that your team's putting together and providing. Sometimes it's really helped those folks get some perspective on something that they were not necessarily finding answers to within their own organizations or within their own markets. And so that has really meant a lot to me over the years. And I'm also amazed at the number of those folks who are actually part of, they don't work for the big national student housing firms, right? They're actually folks that are, many of them, I would say most of them are folks that actually, work in in a single market. In fact, I call them, single market operators because, they may be focusing on one or two universities, but geographically they're, really close. And it's, sometimes we refer to them as scattered site operators or the mom and pop management firms, but it's been a lot of those folks who have come up to me over the years and said, hey, thanks for providing that. I really wanted to understand, how, the national players, how they are approaching things, especially when it comes to technology, when it comes to things around turn, setting rates, those type of things. And they've expressed their appreciation. It's kind of funny over the past, I would say 18, maybe even 24 months, but definitely the past 12 months. It's been a little bit of the reverse. Our audience members and our, partners that follow us, have come to me and said, hey, Wes, we know a lot of these single market operators are listening to the podcast and, they communicate with you a lot. We would like to talk to some because, we're working on this issue and just want to get their perspective. A lot of it has been around centralization. As the bigger players have worked more towards centralization, you got to remember the single market operators have been doing that for years. That is their operation, is being centralized because, they may have 1,000 beds and they're scattered out, in a 5-mile radius all around campus. And so they are, obviously from a leasing perspective, they've got a centralized leasing office. Most of that is, handled as far as with prospects, not only coming in those doors, but, obviously doing so many things, through their website, not just leasing, but other things as well. And then you've got, from an accounting standpoint, collecting rent from all of those. It's a little bit different than when you've got everybody in a building or on a single property. And not to mention that, those rents that they're collecting, they've got to go to multiple owners and multiple bank accounts. And so it's a little bit different, to say the least. And it's been interesting to see the interest that, the national operators have began to take into that. And it's not just the national operators, it's also the software, companies that service student housing. In some situations, they want to find out how to do something better. They also, if they've been adopted by some of the national operators, for them to grow in student housing, they really have got to go, take it to the next step and go to these single market operators as well. And so there's a lot of interest there. And, the truth of the matter is, it's these operators who are, probably 52 to 55% of the student housing market. And so when you think of it from that standpoint, and the reason they're so much larger is because, one, this is the way real estate is typically done, is at a local level. But they're also the most invested, and they've got everything from single family homes to high end, high-rise buildings as well. And that takes a lot of different things, to operate. But one of the main things is their communication with the university. And so it just makes them a little bit different. And I've been speaking with a lot of you folks that are watching this about, their career moves and what they want to do. And they've talked about, hey, maybe, I want to stay in Ann Arbor or Tuscaloosa or Tallahassee. And to do that, it may mean that they're going to have to take a position with, the local management company versus, jumping on with one of the other, operators. So, I wanted to sit down with a couple of these operators, some that I know pretty well. They've listened to the podcast over the years and have certainly reached out with me, and we've worked on some things in the past. And have them provide their perspective on what it takes to do their job and how the industry can, learn from both types of operators. And so this past week, I got to sit down with Cole Oraham of Tiger Properties, which is based in Clemson, and also Harris Kirby, who is she's with Granite. Many of you guys know Granite Student Housing, but they also have a management company in Blacksburg, Virginia, called Point West Management. So if you've been in Blacksburg in the past 20 some years, you've certainly have ran into Point West Management. But what I really loved, in this interview and talking with them, is that both of these companies are just very entrepreneurial, and they're both that way. Even though, as you'll listen to Erin, she actually sold Point West Management to Granite, and even within that, she's been able to really kind of tap into this, the entrepreneurial spirit of Granite as well. And, that just allows for a level of creativity, I guess is the best way to describe it, that you don't always see at the site level of, any other property that, maybe 500,000 beds, that's managed by one of the big box national operators that I mentioned earlier. It's no cut on them. It's just, when you're dealing with smaller companies, there's less that you have to deal with, and in some ways more that you have to deal with on other things. And that's what this episode is really about, is just finding that out from these two operators. So with that being said, let's get to my interview with Erin and Cole. Cole and Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be on it. Thanks, Wes.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is a topic I have been wanting to do for a while, and a lot of it is because we've got, quite a bit. Well, a couple of things. One, let me just, kind of set this up. So, when you think about student housing in the U.S. and kind of what's happened over, let's call it the past 2.5 to 3 decades, there's been this huge push on purpose-built student housing, as it has come into its own as an asset class. And before all that development really happened, you had some developers that were, and I think of the EDRs that, built a lot of the big towers that were just right off campus and had food services and things like that. You had that type of off-campus developer, but it's really been over the past 2.5, 3 decades that you've seen a huge push in development for purpose-built student housing. But prior to that, and even during that time, you had a lot of business owners of property management companies, and real estate, professionals that were building a portfolio within a certain market, certainly in markets like, of course, I'll use here in the Southeast, Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill and Tallahassee. And you had a lot of those firms that were, those local folks that were building up a group of student housing or portfolio of student housing. And then they were really the ones, I would say kind of in the 80s and 90s when, a student talked about, I'm going to go move off campus. That was the real estate company they were going to see to find housing, right? And, over the past 2.5 decades with all this purpose-built student housing stuff, some of those folks have, that started out from that, jumped into that game, right? And, I think of like Price Company, based in Raleigh. They were really focused in on a couple of key markets in that triangle area in Raleigh. Of course, they had stuff in Clemson, and, we'll talk a lot about that, Cole, but they saw this PBSH train coming and they jumped on that. Now they're, top 10 company within the U.S. and have a national footprint. But there's a lot of companies out there that continue to remain with that single market or, a regional approach to student housing. And they're actually some of our biggest listeners. And I think there's a reason for that. There's because the PBSH, overshadows so many other things. When you look at other conferences that, happen within our industry, the content's not really built for them. But they do want to learn, what has PBSH learned and those operators. And maybe there's some things that they can apply to their portfolios. And vice versa, quite honestly. I think there's a lot of folks on the PBSH side that's all that they've known. And you put that person in front of, a single market operator or regional operator, and it blows their mind, the things that, the almost two different worlds that they live in sometimes, but they're serving the same students, right? And so I really wanted to kind of take an opportunity to, speak with some, single market operators and really talk about what those differences are. Because the other amazing part of it is when you look nationally, yes, PBSH gets all of the, it gets all of the news articles and, stories on Fox Business or whatever, but it's really, that's not what is housing most students in the U.S. It's the single family, or I shouldn't say single family markets, but the single market operators. And so I think the numbers, I looked them up. I think it was like 53% is, what is estimated. And with, PBSH operators, looking at 25 to 30% of the total market. So that's kind of the setup for the day. I wanted to, kind of talk about the journeys you guys have been on, really talk about what are some of the fundamentals, that are very different. And, maybe that will help educate some of the folks on the other side of it, on the PBSH side, that are really kind of considering, because I want to create a world where they understand both sides of the coin, right? And I hate to even compare it to a coin, but both sides of the spectrum, I guess. And with that being said, I want to just kind of hand it over to you guys and get kind of a general introduction, and then let's talk about your journey a little bit. So we'll go in alphabetical order. Aaron, you want to start?
Double A's. I'm always first. I service the Virginia Tech Blacksburg market. We do have some in Christiansburg and Radford. And I started my journey in the late 90s when we didn't have a lot of this purpose-built housing or national developments in the area. So kind of grown along with them. One of the things I really love about the third party is the diversity we have. We can offer people many options. We're not a cookie cutter property with all the amenities. So we can kind of tailor to everyone's housing needs based on price point, location, the things they like, the style, all of that. So I like that we can kind of be a one-stop shop for housing in the area by doing third party and having a very diverse portfolio.
Hey, Cole, full transparency, you're one of our Student Housing Insight ambassadors this year. So I've got to know yourself and Tiger Properties pretty well, but excited for the audience to hear you for the first time.
Yeah,
I think this
absolutely.
is the first time.
Yeah.
Have you been on the podcast before?
Not yet. This is my first time, Wes. You've been holding out on me. So hey everyone, my name is Cole Oraham. I'm the Director of Operations at Tiger Properties. We're the property management division of E&E Group. We're a vertically integrated company with development, construction, sales, and management services. So I'm in charge of the management side of things. We manage about 2,100 beds here in the Clemson market, which is about 675 units. About 85% of our portfolio is student, with about 15% being more of the conventional style housing. Then we also have some commercial properties that we manage as well. So we were founded in 2007, but our parent company was back in 1998 by our CEO, Eric Newton. So
yeah, and kind of branching out into the prop tech world too. So
yeah,
excited
absolutely.
to talk about that. Well, hey, Aaron, I want to jump back to you. Your company was recently came under the Granite student living umbrella, which is based in the Midwest, and they've kind of taken this look at expanding and scaling up kind of in a little bit of a different way, instead of building assets, or they're kind of looking into markets to say, hey, are there some of these operators that could benefit from having kind of a larger company and a structure. I don't even want to say behind it, because from everything I understand, they kind of let you guys operate in the market that you're in, the way that you're used to operating. But tell us, give us your journey, as far as your intersection into student housing, and then get us up to date with what's happening with Granite and how all of that came about.
Sure. So I started with a local developer in 98. In Blacksburg, things were just kind of picking up.
Don't shake your head. That's when I was in school. So
I know it was the cusp of the big football era happening. Sorry, Cole. I know you guys have the football legends too, but I
told somebody the other day I graduated in college in '99, and they started looking at their fingers and counting.
Yes. I'm starting to feel old. That was when I was similar in age to our prospects, but local family, kind of what you spoke about earlier, that was building that housing portfolio in the area. It had inherited from their father in the 80s. Really great locations to campus. So started as an admin assistant, didn't know much about property management, but found that I really enjoyed it, had a passion for it. So we did some commercial projects along the way with different retail, office structures, mixed use projects, kind of grew from there.
And did you go to school at Virginia Tech or Radford? Or
I did not. I went to Radford University. Gotcha. That's what brought me to the area, and I've never left yet. So living in Blacksburg and raising a family has been great. So just worked alongside that, kind of learned the business. Then when they were ready to retire, purchased it in 2013. We only had about 100 residential units under management at that time. So just was able to grow really organically by referrals, getting my foot in the door with some local developers, things like that, which evolved to today. We're at over 15, almost 1,600 units that we manage, 4,200 beds. Wow. It's a total 559 properties and 260 owners. So we've really grown, and that kind of evolved into the relationship with Granite, wanting to get their footprint in Blacksburg. Made sense for both of us to acquire Point West, go under their umbrella. I had support, infrastructure, market knowledge. They were navigating the national companies coming into the Purdue market. So really leaned on them to how we can compete with those in Blacksburg and remain on that level. So it was just a really good timing, really good relationship to come together. And they've been a great support, and Point West has kept the brand in the market and kind of operated the way we always have.
So I'm kind of curious. You mentioned 260 owners and 1,400 units?
15, almost 1,600 units.
And so, one of those units may be, owned by, it could have been a second home, or, somebody might have bought it in college as an investment and, turned around and just kept it. So a lot of different scenarios there, but obviously with that difference, you've got some owners that own multiple units. Is that typically done in a fashion where they put all that under one entity, and that's one owner, or how does that typically work with the clients that have more than just one unit?
Typically one common owner, point of contact, but they do have different branches set up, whether it be there's different investors involved in different projects, but all under one umbrella where we have one contact with the information we're providing and the direction from that owner, which makes it a little easier. And then they turn around and report to their investors.
Gotcha. Did we get all the way up to present day with that?
Yeah, that's the present day numbers I should have shared. We're 60% student, 40% non-student, professional housing. And our owner breakdown, we do have those single unit owners, but we also have owners that, own quite a bit of different portfolios under our management.
Gotcha. So talk a little bit about, the Granite. I don't know if we call it an acquisition. I don't know exactly how that works, but tell us a little bit about what led to that, and I would love to kind of get a better understanding of that.
Yeah, it was all very organic. I mean, it was literally them being in Blacksburg. They had an employee that had relocated to the area. They knew they wanted to learn more about student housing, try to find an in. It was literally a cold call that caught me on a good day. I wasn't too buried. So
was it Brent or was it?
It was Brent and John. Walked in the door, said, can we meet with somebody and talk about student housing? I said, sure. So we sat down at a table and just discussed the market, the challenges. We didn't hash out any deals or anything at that time. It was just a great introduction to Granite and what they do. And I really liked the similarities that they had with Point West as far as values and servicing residents and owners.
Yeah. So Cole, obviously you've got principles in place. You're the director of operations. So there's a little bit of an org chart that, maybe you could go through, but I'd love to kind of get the origin story of, how Eric started the company and, what it's turned into today, and then kind of how you've intersected into that.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, it was founded in 2007. It was more of Eric just being kind of the serial entrepreneur that he is. He was very big in construction and development and sales, and had a lot of clients that were saying that they wanted a really good property manager and property management company. And just one of those things that he heard enough that he threw up his hand and said, well, I got to do something about it. So being that it happened in 2007, it was kind of great timing because we know what happened shortly thereafter with a lot of people needing management and rentals. So it started out doing a lot of the, Clemson itself was smaller at the time. So a lot of the single family, small multifamily type properties. And then it just over the years, it's continued to grow. I started with, in property management in January of 2013 as a community assistant, and realized that I loved real estate and got my sales license. And then I got my broker's license, and kind of just kept on chugging along as a property manager, and then joined Tiger Properties in June of 17 and worked side by side with Eric and kind of managing the properties themselves. And then a few years ago, he promoted me to the position I'm at now. So
do you want to take a second and talk a little bit about I'll let you plug the prop tech company you guys have launched. And
yeah, sure.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things that kind of we realized that had a little bit of a gap was everybody gets the big picture numbers for market surveys and for market data, but they still have to do the weekly market surveys. I mean, every market that we talk to everywhere, like, yeah, we get the big picture numbers, but we need to know week by week what's going on, what's leasing, what specials are happening. Basically, you need a benchmark to be able to know, is my property performing as it should be? So we finally decided to pull the trigger on an idea that Eric has had for many years for what's called Renometrics. We are a market survey and data tool. So basically, we have simplified market surveys with the software. If you're signed up, then there's a few different levels, and it's relatively inexpensive. And you have market surveys that you do. We have all the properties built out in the markets that we're going into. And basically, all you do is you click a button, and it pulls down all your floor plans. You click the floor plan, you click the rate, and it uploads into the system, and it tracks it. And then any of the properties that aren't signed up, we're doing the market survey calls. We're gathering the data. And so you actually have real-time data at your fingertips. So anytime that you need to know it, it's right there for you.
So, you're thinking about that and expand on it for just a little bit, because, there's a lot of, we start talking about market surveys, everybody gets a little bit antsy. It seems like these days, but specifically, knowing the types of portfolios that each of you guys have had, that part has got to have been a huge challenge, because you look at the other solutions that are out there, they're not really tracking, especially on a week by week basis, what 401 Elm Street, is leasing, the 5-bedroom house that's, been leased to students for the past, 18 years. No one's tracking that. Have you guys taken it all the way to that level? Is it more of a focus on,
right now,
more of the purpose-built stuff?
Yeah, right now it's solely focusing on the purpose-built. However,
Gotcha.
that is our long-term goal to kind of get all of that included, just because there's a lot of markets that we're looking at that we're wanting to expand into. And
Gotcha.
They might have a few purpose-built, but the majority of it is the smaller multifamily, single families, all that kind of stuff. So,
Gotcha. Well, hey, the next question I wanted to ask you guys, because I kind of hear it quite a bit from those single market operators that I interact with, is kind of from a standpoint of as you look at these other, because both of you, neither of you guys have worked for one of these like national operators that I've mentioned, and so you guys have been in this basically your entire careers. So I'm kind of curious, as you look at these national operators and those management firms, and they're mostly focused on purpose-built student housing of call it 250 beds plus, right? Is there envy that you have when you look at that, or is it gratefulness that you don't have to deal with that? What's the perspective?
It's both, actually. I would love to have some of the marketing budgets that they have and incentives to give away Pelotons and all those cool things students love that we just don't have in our marketing budget. But then it's also great that we don't have that corporate level management where everything is black and white. We can go to an owner and pivot and say, this is not working. Can we do this? Would you wiggle on the rent a little bit on this? It's just more person to person touch points than just somebody higher up making the decisions and filtering down to today's rents are this, and you throw in a gift card to get them to sign whatever. So we're a bit more flexible, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, I mean, we operate, we've got 4 large communities, 3 kind of boutique communities, and then the rest of it is more of the kind of the single family, small multifamily stuff. So it's a little split on some of that, because we still operate like some of the big guys do with the larger properties, and then have the more personalized.
What's the largest size property you guys have?
517 beds.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, with those, obviously that one, it still has that marketing budget. It still has all that kind of stuff. But then we have the individual owners that we manage for. We've got about 90 owners that we manage for. And with those, it is much more personalized. It is much more of, hey, right now the 3 bedrooms over here they aren't moving. So we need to come up with something or do some sort of updates to the property, or here's the thing. So it's normally if they only have one property, then they might be a little bit more hesitant to do some of the upgrades because it might not have been budgeted and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more of the working with them, walking them through it than with the larger properties where they have the budgets and you can kind of plan ahead and you can have variances and kind of forecast what needs to be done over the coming years. So
talk just really quick about platforms. Let's specifically talk about property management systems. I don't think you guys are using the same thing, but I think both of you guys are using systems that are very well known in student housing. So let's talk about the tech stack and kind of start with the property management system that each of you guys are using.
Yeah. So we use AppFolio for property management software. Okay. It really works well for our style of portfolio. And then we found that the integrations they work well for what we need as well. If Alex Bennett is watching this, we've got opinion. And so that was great to get added on.
And I'm actually drinking out of the Opinion coffee mug today.
Look at there.
Perfect plug.
Yeah. So with that, they've got a great software for being able to integrate and do what it needs to do. But there's other type of softwares that we've looked into that we couldn't get it going for more of a scatter site portfolio. They're built more so for the larger companies or the larger properties. And whenever you tell them, well, no, I've got 35 single family homes that I want to get this set up with, they kind of just scratch their head and look at you funny, like, well, I don't know how we can help you on that one. So
we also use AppFolio. I'm sorry, were you going to ask another question, Wes?
Well, I think one thing I wanted I want you to answer that question, but the other thing that I was just thinking about that we should certainly hit on is kind of what staff structure looks like, as well, and what's happening from a standpoint of, on that 520 odd bed property. Does it have its own manager, or are you guys managing that from a central office? So, let's Cole, before we leave you want to talk a little bit about staff structure?
Yeah, for sure. So for the longest time, we've operated out of our central leasing office, just centralized leasing. That's basically all it was. We've got a location in downtown Clemson. So we're the only one there. We get a ton of foot traffic, and it's worked great, and it still works great. As things have kind of shifted and progressed, we have seen need for more of the on-site staffing. So we have a little bit of a quasi structure right now. So we do have on-site staff for the larger communities that we manage, while some of them we still manage partially remotely. Maybe it's partial hours, and then have it staffed with community assistants and student workers and stuff like that. So we have a lot of students. We have probably about 20 right now that work for us. They all go through our own type of our own training program, and kind of get them ready with, hey, here's our structure, here's how we operate, here's our values, here's how we do what we do. And so the students have been, they're just an integral part of our company. We want to give back to, especially for Clemson University and the surrounding technical colleges, we want to give back to them and pour into the students that are there. And then they in turn are able to provide, just excellent quality and just phenomenal people. So we've had a lot of people throughout the years that we just kind of track and watch where they go. And it's awesome. That's one of my favorite parts of the job.
It is. When you're working with someone, at that stage in their life, that season of their life, and kind of see what they go on to do and how you've played a little bit of a part in it. That's always the coolest part of being in student housing is my opinion. So Aaron, let's go to you with that, both that tech stack question as well as, staffing.
So we also use AppFolio, which we find very versatile for our needs. It works great. We are kind of nudging them a little bit. We struggle with having blended individual leases and joint leases. maybe tailoring that a little bit more to student housing would be very helpful. But other
Beth
than that,
Gilbert, if you're listening,
yes, let's get that implemented. I share the same sentiment as Cole on other software. It's hard to find those things. Lead generation is something we struggle with. How do we dig in and analyze that, and where, if they're not signing with us, where are they going? Those type things, just to have better data tracking for our owners is something we're working on. As well as just general items such as, the move-in inspection form and the move-out inspection process. We've not been able to tie one software together. So we find we're still using a hybrid of Google Docs and things like that alongside AppFolio, which works well, but there's a need for more software tools for sure.
Yeah. So how about staff structure? And, I think one kind of question to that as well is, how has everything with Granite been? Has that changed anything? With staffing structure, and since now you kind of have some of those resources, it's kind of funny. We talked about this, I think, on the right as we were getting started, and Cole's having to take call this week.
I've got our on-site maintenance phone, so if anybody that calls for any of our 2,100 properties gets me right now.
Fortunately, I do not have to carry an on-call phone. I'm very sorry for that, Cole. I did at one time, but not now. Boots on the ground, we're centralized as well. At downtown Blacksburg office, we don't have any on-site management. We'll do a few student interns. Virginia Tech does have a great property management program, but we don't always have the success of identifying many that can carry a workload and a class load as well. So we have managers for each department: leasing manager, maintenance manager, operations manager. So they all have roles and teams under them. Our leasing specialists are all licensed real estate agents. So they're out there, boots on the ground, showing property. Several maintenance techs that are all certified. We do as much maintenance in-house as we can, just so we can control the efficiency it's done in and save those costs for owners.
Yeah.
Same thing with grounds. And then our operations team, they're handling the turns and the vendor management and the tenant compliance and all of that. So it's a great team that all kind of meshes and networks. And then the support Granite provides us more on the corporate level, such as human resources, accounting, which is great to not have that on our plate all the time.
I'm amazed to hear an accounting person say that.
I know. It was not one of those things I loved to do. Not sure why I majored in accounting, but all that just seems to make the day-to-day operations easier, so we can focus on what's truly happening in Blacksburg while they're kind of doing all the paperwork.
Yeah. Something that I didn't prepare you guys for this question, but, I want to talk a little bit about university relationship. And because I've always noticed with single market operators that the relationship with the university is either really good or not good at all. There's a lot of history there. What's your perspective? Do you agree with that? What's that relationship been like for you guys?
So just for example, this morning, the university had sent out an invite to all of the property management companies in the area and all of the communities that have property managers, inviting them.
I feel like we got breaking news you're about to say.
No, just for relations and everything. They invited everybody to a little seminar this morning going over the resources that they provide to students for and to faculty for just like any of the different stuff. So any of health concerns, any of the mental health concerns, any of the safety concerns, anything like that, just to kind of make us more aware of what they offer, so that if we catch wind of a student who might be in a difficult spot mentally, then we can reach out to them and say, hey, here's this student. We know that they're at Clemson, and we think that you guys should reach out to them. So just making them aware and kind of making us aware and having that kind of connection. So that's just one example, because that was something this morning, but Yeah, we have a very good relationship with the university.
Student services at Clemson has been great with that. Because I remember when I was working in that market, I think they may have been one of kind of the first in the country that provided that alert system where, a property manager or, anybody really could anonymously kind of, provide some kind of a heads up of, hey, this is a student. You probably ought to check into this.
Yeah. I mean, they even offer mediation services. If there's roommates not getting along, you can send them the information, be like, hey, can you guys reach out to these people? And so, yeah, it's really neat.
That's great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We have a great relationship, not only with Virginia Tech, but the Blacksburg Police Department. Every year they're proactive on gathering key student groups, property managers, especially right before football season to kind of set standards. The Dean of Students has an open door. We're able to reach him for any concerns, things like that. They're always very inviting to share what we have available with off-campus housing. We have a great partnership with there. They do 2 housing fairs a year on campus that everyone's invited to. So I think we have a great relationship and feel very open line of communication with the university.
Gotcha. So I wanted to talk, we have a lot of suppliers and service providers that listen to this podcast that, have a huge focus in student housing. You mentioned that, Appfolio, and I shout out to Beth Gilbert again, because I know she's always got ears to the ground on what's happening in student housing as her and her team continue to make that product better. Would love to understand from you guys, because I hear it from them all the time of, hey, we're doing this on, the purpose-built student housing, but, Wes, I've heard you say, this is a much bigger market as far as the single market operators. And, how can we meet more of them? How can we service them better? So I just want to throw that question to you guys. What are some of the pain points where you feel like those folks could, either come to market with something or change something a little bit that could better help you guys? Or, maybe you guys have some favorite vendors out there that you want to give a shout out to. That would be great too.
More painters, more cleaners, more turn services. The cycle we're
July
in.
10th, I'm sure that.
Yes, we have a very short window to prepare units. It's always not enough of those to go around in the market. So if anybody wants to start a turn management business, I'm sure they would be highly successful. That's probably our biggest pain point, just because of the push that it is during that time frame, just to get everything done. But we're always looking for new vendors, new services, whether it be supplies, different things to option. Marketing, we did partner with a marketing group that was able to send out some ambassadors on campus, which I thought was great. We were able to do that. So we're always looking for ways to improve through services, for sure.
So to go back to my on-site days, I remember there was the single market operator for UNC Charlotte was a guy by the name of Eric Biggers. And I think it was just called University Rentals or something like that. But, he had this house that set right across the street from the main entrance of campus. It was, probably circa 1964 build, that he converted into an office. And that's where everybody went, right? If they wanted to move off campus. And of course, while I was in college was, when the influx of this purpose-built stuff was coming in. And even prior to that, there was a lot of, it's still purpose-built student housing, but it's the kiddie condo stuff. And it was one of the biggest developers was out of Roanoke, which, I've worked with before. And first project was in Blacksburg. That the Bradleys with University Housing Group, built there. And then, they did a couple of projects at Clemson as well. And they had a really large footprint, just off the campus of UNC Charlotte. And Eric managed those HOAs and then also, was managing, for a lot of those owners and everything. And I knew him because I was on one of the HOA boards and because I owned a condo at one of those, and then I got into the purpose built stuff and was managing that. And so Eric and I had a good relationship. But he called me up in July of one year, and he was like, "I can't. You got to stop, stealing all of my vendors." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "I can't get any vendors that I've been working with for the past decade because they would rather do your stuff." He's like, "I'm paying them more than I've ever paid them. I know I'm paying them more than you're paying them, but they don't want to come over here." Because everything is like right here. They're not having to, to manage everything all over campus, and everything's just stacked up like dominoes at a purpose built property. So it's easy for them to knock out. So I could imagine during your tenure there in Blacksburg that you've probably gone through quite a bit of that as well.
Yes, we all have to share, and if they're good, everybody wants them.
Yeah. So Cole, how about for you? Any suggestions for those service providers?
So on the tech side, I kind of touched on it earlier. It's difficult whenever most of the products kind of don't tailor to what we need. Most of them are tailored more so for the larger properties and stuff like that. So we talked about turn. We've got, as of right now, I've got move out starting in 8 days. So depending on when you're listening to this, but one of the difficulties is, properly tracking all of the move out flow and vendor flow, and the products that are out there that I've found at least don't really service the scatter site very well. It works incredible for the communities, but then just doesn't really work. So you can't really do half one, half the other. It doesn't really work out too well. It's been a struggle for vendors since COVID time. So yeah, everyone that's listening to this knows the fun of that.
Well, and given your specific campuses, being in Clemson, where Greenville's the closest thing, right? And Blacksburg, Roanoke's kind of the closest thing. I got to imagine that's, you're having to pull from those cities. So, those are a good 30-minute, 40-minute drives. And yeah, I can imagine that's, fortunately for me, when I was at UNC Charlotte, we had plenty of vendors we could work through. But yeah, there's so many of these, land grant universities that are in areas that are a good, 30 minutes to an hour away from any kind of population hub. And that adds to it as well.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you where we're finding them because I don't want you to find them. But
I'm sure.
we find ours from out of town, and we actually put them in a vacant unit and let them do all of the turn stuff. So yeah, that's the only way to be able to do it whenever you have a college that is bigger than the city. So
yeah. So for something, for somebody, maybe it's a property manager, maybe it's somebody that's a current leasing agent or community assistant, and they're on the purpose-built student housing side, and they've got single market operators in their market and that are very well known, and they're listening to this and saying, what, I think I may like that side of of this business better. It's a little bit more stable as far as, you can always be there. If it's like yourself, Aaron, and somebody that's wanting to stay in Blacksburg, something like that, would provide that for them. Right. So for those folks that are considering, coming over to that side, what kind of both expectations, but more so, what is it that you guys would be looking for? Because obviously if they've got, a couple of years on the purpose-built student housing side, they're going to be they're going to be trained, based on that operator that they worked with and that type of facility. What kind of advice would you give them on, what it really takes to make that, switch over to not just a single market operator, but, when you were dealing with scattered sites and smaller properties, what kind of advice would you have for them?
So in our market, we have somebody that's worked in our company at probably maybe half of the properties in the area or the companies in the area. So we've lost a few to the big guys. They've come back with it, and some haven't. And it's just, I mean, you kind of see both sides of the coin, because sometimes they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, this is a big company. That means that there's going to be tons of growth opportunities because I can go to Seattle to take this position, or to Atlanta to take this one, and then they get in there and they realize, hey, I've got a lot of layers, and it might not be the rainbows and butterflies that I thought it was going to be originally. And a lot of, again, more of a little bit of the bureaucracy that goes along with it, versus the smaller companies where all of them, they know Eric. They get to see him every day. They get to talk to me. They get to learn more, because they can sit there and they can ask me a question. They can say, hey, using the students again as an example, hey, I think I want to go into sales. What should I look for? Or I think that I want to do something in marketing and stuff like that. So it's that kind of thing that I don't think that you necessarily would get as much with the bigger operators than you would with the smaller ones. Mm-hmm. And then to the ones that are looking to make the transition from the large portfolios over to the more regional companies, and the things that you'll need to learn that are different is you don't just have a credit card that you can go out and buy supplies with because you need it, or petty cash or whatever you may have. It's, you got to get it and figure out, all right, is this a company expense or is this a property expense? So it's just a little bit more of the thinking through that kind of stuff. It's a different beast.
I would agree with everything you said, Cole. And I would say, if you're looking for not boring, exciting, if you're tired of being on the same property every day, I mean, third parties for you. You can be all about town. You can juggle mini balls. Like I said, every property is different. So retaining that knowledge of, this floor plan versus that floor plan, and this location versus that location, it's never boring. And if you like working with a team, we are certainly teamwork oriented. Everybody helps everybody, and it's just a great work environment.
Yeah. Well, great.
You get to be very good friends with Sherwin-Williams, because you have 5,000 different paint colors for all these different units.
Oh, so, I hadn't even thought about that. You mean you guys haven't gone through the process of just standardizing everything?
It's an owner
decision. It's harder
decision
than you think. I really wanted to. I was going to go agreeable gray across the board one year, and couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's the cost for a full paint versus
exactly.
Yeah, it's just how do you tell an owner, hey, your turnover this year is going to be an extra $1,000 because we're going to change the color of the whole house? It's
well, if it's because like if I had that 520 bed property and everything,
all that standard. No, any of the communities are all
but
standard.
I'm just trying to put it in on a level where maybe some folks can understand it, but it's one thing when you're talking about, pretend it was a condo conversion, right, where we end up in over 5, 6, 7 years end up buying an entire condo community, and now we're going to operate it as an apartment community, with you guys managing it. And you're going to run into that situation because you've got all these owners that have done every little modification to their unit. And that's something you've got to come in on the front end, knowing that capital has to be spent to standardize it, because otherwise, in order to build value, because that OpEx is going to be through the roof if you're trying to replace the same thing. But when you're talking to somebody that, it's a 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom house or something, and you want to go in and standardize everything, across that single family portfolio, right? Yeah. God, wow. Yeah. That's a big ask, because the expense savings isn't going to be, they're not necessarily looking at value creation. They're just looking at the, month to month cash flow for the most part. Mm-hmm. So very interesting. Well, guys, thanks so much for your time. like I said, I've been excited to do this. I really want to kind of give this perspective to, some of our audience members that don't necessarily get exposed to this side of our business. And I appreciate you guys spending the time doing this. We'll make sure that we put your email addresses and everything in the show notes if someone wants to get in touch with you. But any other final thoughts or words that you want to make sure our audience is aware of?
If you know anyone that's looking for management services in Clemson, tell them to come our way. And if you're looking in Blacksburg, you better contact Aaron. And sorry, we have an Anna in our office. And also, Clemson's going to win the national championship this year. So for football,
keep your fingers crossed.
Oh, there.
I won't dispute that, Cole. Thank you. It's been great. I love sharing property management talk with anyone that will probably listen to it. So it's been a pleasure just chatting with you all today.
Well, great. And good luck to both of your universities with football season this year. Maybe we'll see. Is the ACC championship game back in Charlotte this year, or is it moved?
I think it's in Charlotte. I need to double check.
Yeah. So hopefully
my mind's on turnover right now.
Yeah. So, maybe. I can't remember. Is Clemson and Virginia Tech are in the same?
We've got.
They're in the same.
Yeah, we do. We have Virginia this year, don't we?
Yeah, but as far as meeting up in the championship, that won't actually happen because both of you guys are in the Atlantic, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're both in ACC currently.
Well, I mean, specifically the Atlantic Division versus whatever they call it, the Coastal Division. So, So I guess you guys would never meet up in Charlotte for a championship game. But anyway, well, guys, thanks so much, and we will chat soon.
Sounds good. See you guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
See ya.
Well, again, big thanks to Aaron and Cole and for their time and for sharing, their perspectives on everything on the single market operator side of our business. I'm excited to see how they continue to grow not only themselves professionally but also growing their companies and servicing the universities that they're at. So to close things out, I do want to make you aware of a couple of events that are coming up that you definitely want to put on your calendar. If you're going to NMHC's Student Housing Conference in Vegas this October, I believe that's October 7th through 9th. On October 8th, we're going to be doing a Top Golf mixer for all owners and operators that are attending the conference. So you can go to studenthousinginsight.com and click on the events tab to register for that. If you're a supplier or a vendor and you would like to attend, you are invited to be a sponsor. I'll leave my email in the show notes, and you can email me there, and I can send you more info. Also, later this year, we're doing 2 events around LeaseCon TurnCon. So if you've been attending LeaseCon TurnCon over the past few years, you know that it has been in Charlotte, it makes things a little bit easier for me for sure. But this is put on by our friends at Interface Conference Group and France Media, who publish Student Housing Business Magazine. But if you've been going for the past couple of years, you know that we do a big end of year mixer on the opening night. We'll be doing that again this year, different venue though. We've outgrown the last venue. But LeaseCon TurnCon is going to be, like I said, in Charlotte again at the Hilton Uptown in Charlotte. So we're moving just a block down the other way to another venue for our end of year mixer, which has always been a lot of fun. There's not an events page on that just yet. We're right here at the end of July. It'll probably be end of August before we put that out. But that is going to be on December 9th. Again, that's the opening night of LeaseCon. And then the LeaseCon, the main date for it is the 10th. And then also on December 11th, so the day after, we will be hosting our second annual Shop Talk Executive Summit. This is an invite-only event. It's a workshop style event it's very intimate and exclusive among executives and executives of operating companies. And we did a trial run last year that Walta Campus Properties graciously sponsored for us. And everyone that attended just said that they really got a lot out of it. They wanted to do it again. So we're doing it again. So what can you expect from the Shop Talk Executive Summit? It's an opportunity for operators of really all sizes to come together and talk about, what's ahead for the next year, and then kind of collectively talking about, potential solutions to get over any hurdles that we're all facing. So again, it's a one-day event. Although I think a lot of the folks that are planning on going are probably going to have some dinners and some evening plans in Charlotte before they leave. But it pairs up really well with LeaseCon, and if you're thinking about going to LeaseCon, definitely would suggest that you email us in regards to the executive event as well. Again, it's invite only. You will not see it on our events page, but if you are listening and you're an executive, let's say regional manager and above type of position, I would say, if you're thinking about going and you're thinking, hey, I could really benefit from having some networking time with folks like that, shoot me an email. Again, that address is in the show notes, and we'll be sure to get you an invitation. Well, guys, that does it for this episode. Again, thank you for watching. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, hopefully you're liking this medium. If we've obviously put our webinars and stuff on YouTube before, but now that we're recording more of this stuff on video, we'll keep doing it. If you guys like it, I'll know by the number of subscriptions on our YouTube channel. So if you're watching that, make sure that you subscribe there. And again, I want to thank the Guarantors for sponsoring this episode. If you would like to find out how they can get more students qualified to live at your properties and help reduce a bad debt, go check them out at theguarantors.com/student. Again, we'll provide that link in the show notes, but again, it's theguarantors.com/student, no S on the end of that. Thanks so much. I appreciate you listening. And if you've got any value out of this, please share the podcast with your colleagues and go check us out at studenthousinginsight.com. Thanks.